You open your closet every morning without thinking twice. A shirt, pants, maybe a jacket if it's cold. It feels like the most obvious thing in the world, but here's the strange part. For most of human history, you didn't wear clothes at all. Your ancestors walked around bare-skinned for millions of years. And then, at some very specific point, that changed forever. The real reason isn't what you think, and scientists only figured it out by studying something you'd never expect. Lice. Yes, lice. The tiny insects living in your hair right now hold the actual receipt for when humans first got dressed. And the story they tell rewrites everything you thought you knew about early humans. Here's where it starts. Around 2 million years ago, your ancestors lost most of their body hair. This wasn't random. As early humans began walking longer distances and hunting in the heat of the African savanna, thick fur became a liability. Too much heat trapped against the skin meant overheating, and overheating meant death. So natural selection stripped away the fur and left behind something better suited for the job. Millions of sweat glands in bare skin that could release heat fast. For a long time, that bare skin was all humans had. No shirts, no wraps, nothing. So how do you figure out when that changed? You can't dig up fabric from 200,000 years ago. Cloth rots, hides decompose. There's no ancient closet buried in the dirt, waiting to be found. For decades, this left researchers with almost nothing to work with. Then, in 2003, geneticists Mark Stoneking and Ralph Kittler had an idea that sounded almost absurd. They decided to study body lice. Here's why that mattered. Head lice have existed on humans for millions of years, clinging to hair the way they always have. But body lice are different. Body lice can only survive by living in clothing, laying their eggs in the seams of fabric pressed against skin. Without clothes, body lice simply cannot exist. So Stoneking and Kittler reasoned that if they could figure out when body lice genetically split off from head lice as a separate species, they'd know almost exactly when humans started wearing something on their bodies for the first time. They sequenced the DNA. They measured the genetic distance between the two lice populations. And the answer that came back stunned the field. Somewhere around 170,000 years ago, give or take, body lice split off and became their own distinct lineage. Which means, somewhere around that same window, humans put on the first clothes in history. Think about the scale of that number. 170,000 years. Humans as a species are roughly 300,000 years old. That means, for nearly half of human existence, your ancestors lived completely naked, and clothing only appears in roughly the second half of the story. So what happened 170,000 years ago that suddenly made clothing necessary? The timing lines up almost perfectly with a brutal shift in Earth's climate. Around that period, the planet was sliding deep into an ice age, and temperatures in parts of Africa, and the regions humans were beginning to migrate through, dropped sharply. Bare skin that had once been perfect for shedding heat on the savanna suddenly became a serious liability in the cold. Archaeologist Ian Gilligan has spent years studying this exact transition, and his research points to something surprising. Clothing wasn't invented for modesty. It wasn't invented for status or decoration. It was invented, first and foremost, as a survival technology against the cold, a portable layer of insulation that let humans push into freezing environments their bare bodies could never have survived alone. Gilligan's work goes even further. He argues that clothing didn't just protect early humans. It may have actively driven waves of human migration. Once humans could wrap animal hides around their bodies, they were no longer trapped in warm climates. They could follow herds of game into colder territories. They could cross into regions with harsh winters that would have killed an unclothed body within hours. Clothing became the technology that unlocked the entire planet. Here's the twist that makes this even stranger. Neanderthals lived in cold parts of Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, long before modern humans arrived there. And yet the archaeological evidence suggests they never developed tailored, fitted clothing the way Homo sapiens eventually did. Neanderthal sites show simple hide draping, animal skins thrown over the body, rather than shaped and sewn garments. Modern humans, on the other hand, left behind bone needles with tiny eye holes, dating back tens of thousands of years, proof of actual sewing, actual tailoring, actual fitted layers, designed to trap warmth close to the body. Some researchers now believe this single difference, sewn clothing versus draped hides, may have given Homo sapiens a critical survival edge in the brutal cold snaps of the last ice age, while Neanderthals, wrapped in looser, less efficient coverings, struggled to adapt as quickly. A needle and thread, in other words, may have quietly helped decide which species of human made it to today. So the next time you grab a jacket without thinking, you're repeating an act your ancestors invented under existential pressure, in the freezing edge of an ice age, as a direct response to a climate trying to kill them. It wasn't fashion. It wasn't culture in the way you think of culture today. It was raw survival engineering, stitched together with bone needles and animal sinew, born from a crisis so old that the only witnesses left to testify about it are insects still living in the seams of your shirt. And that's the strangest part of all. You'll probably never think about lice again the same way, because buried in their DNA is a timestamp, an accidental archive of one of the most important inventions your species ever made. Not agriculture, not fire, not language, clothing. The thing you put on without a second thought this morning is quietly one of the oldest technologies that allowed humans to survive at all. You open your closet every morning without thinking twice. Now you know exactly why that choice exists in the first place, and exactly how old and how desperate that first choice really was.